So I think in the last class, Shogun walk you through. Let me see. So I think he walked you through arrays, and for example, I remember the last class I took, we are supposed to talk on how on the operations we can perform on arrays, and which I mentioned we can add values to arrays. We can remove values from the array, and we can check the values in the array, and there are many more operations like that. So which I think I remember also I walk us through some operations we can use to do some methods or functions we can use to perform some of these operations. So like push, and I also remember Shegun walk us through completing those methods we can use. For example, he mentioned we can use pop to delete element from array, and pop removes the last element, which as you can see from the note. And also he mentioned some other methods like unshift, shift, and how to access element in array using index. And also I remember he mentioned, I think in his last class, he talks about object, right? Which by now I think we should understand what objects are. Hello.
I missed many of the classes actually, so I think so. I think he talked about objects last week.
Okay.
This Wednesday rather.
Hello, Comfort, can you hear me? Hello. Okay, anyways, we can continue. So yeah, you mentioned about object, but okay, so because part of what we are supposed to do in today's class is going to revolve around arrays and objects. Maybe let's see, I don't know. Yeah, let's see how we are going to talk about it anyway. So, and I also believe he mentions about these logical operators in his last class. He mentioned operators like or and not in the last class, right?
Yes, he did.
Okay. So, and I believe you also understand what these operators does, right?
He talked about or and.
But not.
No, I don't remember not. I think
okay.
It was just and yes.
Okay, so maybe I think I can start from there, and so we take it from there and we continue what we are supposed to do today. So what you're supposed to do today has to do with iterations in JavaScript. And so, but since you said he didn't mention about this not, so I'm going to just do a quick recap on these three operators. And so not something deep, but what they does and how they work. So, and so one thing is we have I think there should be 4 type of logical operators in JavaScript anyway, but we'll be talking about 3, which are one is or, second is and the third is not. So for us to understand this much better, I'm going to take a couple of steps backward and mention about, just to remind us of these scenario we've been using, which is let me see. Yeah, this scenario we've been using, which is like we have a school, and in that school we have 3 classes: class 1, class 2, class 3, and in each of the class we have numbers of students, which you can see from this picture. We have 5 students in class 1, 5 students in class 2, and 5 students in class 3, right? So I'm going to keep using this scenario or case study to explain how and works, how all works, and how not works. So taking for example, let me go back and start again. So first thing you need to understand about all these logical operator is it's just a way for us to like compare something. For example, let's assume the same example we mentioned in our class. Let's say in this class now, we said we have 5 students in class 1, right? Class 1. And in our class, I think we've been mentioning, okay, so we've been mentioning like, let me see a couple of names we have in those class. Okay, so I can, I think I can get this. So these are the students in our class. But as you can see, these students are in array are in arrays, and we, okay, this is more like 6 students. Let's make it 5. So taking this a little bit step forward, well, maybe I can first explain something how all works, and how AND works and how not works, and see how we can adapt it to JavaScript. So one thing about AND OR is it converts any of the arguments we are passing it, or operators convert the arguments or the operand to booleans, and it check these booleans. I'm going to show example. I'm just trying to write it, so if you are trying to read this all over again, you can understand. And it tries to like compare these booleans, compare, not check, compare these booleans. So for example is, and it's more like a simple, like it's more like all this mathematical operator we have exactly. So for example, what we are trying to say here is, let's say we have let's say let number 1 equals to 10, and let's say let number 2 equals to 5, right? And so how does all works? One thing about all you need to note is, let me put let me insert the table here. Table, let's say, working here, or operator, yeah. So let me say, so the first thing is it's try to like compare 2 things together. So for example, let's say you want to check, we are trying to check if, and I don't know if you mentioned about if statements, right? Have you talked about if statements? Did they mention if statements?
Yes, I think yes. Yes.
Conditional statements, right?
Conditional statement, exactly. And you understand how it works, right?
Yes.
Okay, so for example, we use if statement or conditional statement just to check something. For example, if I want to check with if here and check if I want to check if number 1 strictly equals to 10, or, and we don't write all this way. This is how we write all in JavaScript is we write it like this. And if number 2 strictly equals 5. I also want to believe you understand what this means, right?
Yes, please.
Okay. So this is not like normal. You remember we have the assignment. This is the assignment, or will I call it symbol, right? In JavaScript, this one is an assignment, but this one is this, either this or this. It is not an assignment. It's more like let me say, you can call it like something to compare something. So it's more like an equality sign. So you can call it equality sign. But this with 2 equals means they call it I know this one is called strictly equals. It's called strictly equals. I'm going to explain how they works anyways. So it's called strictly equals. And I can't remember the exact name they call it, but this one is more like just trying to check if something is equals. It's also an equality sign. Equality. So how does this work? So what I'm trying to explain the other time is we want to check if number 10, you remember we declare number 1 to be equals to 10. I will also declare number 2 to be equals to 5, right? And now we want to check And you understand how this works with memory, like this is going to save in the memory, this is going to save in the memory, right? And now we are now trying to check the values we have in the value we store as number 10 in our memory. And we're trying to check, does this equals to 10 in memory? And this is going to check in memory, right? And it's going to say, okay, this is going to return what? This is going to say, okay, this is what it is true, right? Because it's going to check the value for number 1 in memory. It's going to see that it is the value saved for it is 10, right? The value assigned for it is 10, right? Once it saw that it is 10, then it's going to come back and say, okay, this is true. And also this number 2 is also going to memory and check again, like what value was assigned for number 2. It's going to see it is 5. And does number, so what I'm trying to explain here is, okay, maybe I can do it this way so we understand. So first thing is we call this operation, and remember, if this is true, you want to do something. You want to say, okay, if this is true, then you can do number 1 plus number 2, and we are still going to the console to try this out. But so let me first explain this. So what we're trying to do here is first thing is this is going to go to the memory and check the value for number 1. It's going to check the value in the memory and see number 1 to be equals to what? What is the value for number 1 in the memory?
10.
10. So it's going to go to the memory, it's going to check it is 10, and it's going to replace this number 1 to be equals to what? 10. And it's going to check, does 10 equals to 10? Yes. Then it's going to put this as 2. Then this also is going to go to the memory. It's going to check what is this is going to go to the memory also. It's going to check what is the value for number 2. 5. So it's also going to replace this with 5. And it's going to compare, does 5 strictly equals to 5? What does strictly equals mean? What does normal equals means? I'm going to explain that, but I just want to get this part first. Then I'm going to explain what's the difference between both. We're going to check what does 5 strictly equals to 5? It's going to be, okay, yeah, that is true. So 5 equals to 5. Then if this is true, so and now one thing I need to explain right shortly now is but once we do this, I'm going to explain that thing now is first thing is going to check, does true or true. I know this is not going to make sense now, but it's going to make sense when I explain this part now. So but it's going to check true or true. And one thing about all statement I need to mention, or all operator I need to explain is, if I'm going to come back to this, is for all operator, we have 4 cases that can happen. First thing is it has to check true. We always have it like this. One side has to be, I'm going to explain this also shortly now, and this can be true, and this can be false, and this can be false, and this is going to be false. And let's say this is going to be the result, and this is going to be let's say argument 1 or condition, argument 1, and this is going to be for argument 2. So it's going to check, remember this is going to be the argument 1 here, and this is going to be our argument 2, or operand 1 or operand 2. It's going to check one. You remember I said this is argument 1, this is argument 2. What is going to be the result? The result is for all statements for this logical OR, we can only get true if one of these arguments is true. This, we are going to get a result of true here if and only we can, for all statements, for all operator, the result can only be true if and only if one of the arguments is true. What does that mean is, this is argument 1, so it means that one of these either argument 1 is true or argument 2 is true. That's the only time you can have the result to be true. And once you see here, you can see like both of them are true, right? At least one of them is true, which means the result can get here is true, right? Here we have false on one side, we have true for one argument. We have one argument true, right? One is true, argument 2 is right, and argument 1 is wrong, is false. And provided that one of it is true, then you can get the result of true. I'm still going to explain this for that so you understand how it works. And for this, which of the argument is, do we have any argument true here? Hello?
Yeah.
Which of the argument is true?
Yes, it's true.
Sorry?
It's true.
Yeah, like which of it is true?
The first argument.
So provided we have one that is true, then the result can be true. And on this line, do you have any true argument here?
No.
No, then this is going to be false. Now coming back to this statement, you can see we have one argument is true and one argument is true. And it's an OR, you can see it's an OR operator. Then the result is going to be what? Hello?
To be true.
It's going to be true. And provided this is true, I can see someone is on the train.
I'm actually on the train joining
Yeah.
you.
So the point here is if both of these, if the result is true, this is going to evaluate like, does the result of this equals to true? If result is equals to true, then it's going to change this to true. And this is going to mean like result equals true. And provided the result equals to, then that's the only case, that's the only time that this body can evaluate. And remember what we are trying to do here, we want to do the sum. And provided the result is true, then we can evaluate this to be what? Then it's going to compute the value of, it's going to get the number of num1 from the memory, which is 10. And it's also going to get the number of num2 from the memory, which is what? 5. And our sum is going to be what? Do you understand this?
Yes.
Hello? So I know you're going to talk about this, right? Which you also come. I'm just trying to like refresh our memory on this, because once you understand this, it's really going to help us when we get to this, what we are going to talk about iteration today in class. And same thing also goes for the AND operator. Let's go to the AND. So I'm going to change this to AND, and it's denoted with this symbol. Sorry. And how does AND work? For AND, so for logical AND. And how does it work? So for AND, both of the arguments has to be true for the result to be what? To be true. That's the only thing for this. So in this case, we need to check this also. So remember this said what? Both arguments has to be what? To be true.
True.
For the result to be what? To be true.
True.
Let's do the first argument is what? True.
True.
The second argument is what?
False.
True, right? Then the result will be what?
True.
True.
True. For this, the first argument is what?
False.
Then the second argument is what?
True.
Then the result will be what?
False.
False, exactly. It's going to be false. And for this also, the first argument is what?
True.
The second argument is what?
False.
And the result will be what?
False.
False. Okay, then for this, the first argument is what?
False.
The second argument is what?
False.
Then the result will be what?
False.
False, exactly. And so also, let's try to take this example we did here, this same example, and see what is going to happen now. Let's take this same example, and let's take this example and try to use it. But in this case, we are going to change this to AND, because we're trying to evaluate for AND. So what is going to happen? First thing is going to take this code again, all over again. It's going to, what is the value of 10 in the memory?
Number 1.
10, right? Number 1 in the memory is what? 10,
10.
right? And what is the value of num2 in the memory?
5.
5, right? And it's going to check. So let me copy this again so I don't So it's going to check, does 10 strictly equals to 10? Does 10 equals to 10?
Yes.
Yes, then this is going to be what? True. And it's going to check this also, does 5 equals to 5?
Yeah.
True. It's going to change this to true. And for this, remember and says that both of these argument has to be what? True. For this body to evaluate. And you can see this is true, then what is going to happen? Then it's going to set the result to be what? Equals to true, right? And if this is true, you remember we said for hand, both has to be true, right? From this table, for it to be true. And sorry, I think I put it in the wrong place. Let me copy this. Sorry. Yeah, put it on the hand. It should be, yeah, it should be here. So I remember we said both has to be true for the result to be true. And provided the result is true, then what is inside can do what? It can happen. And it's going to check now. Sum is going to be what? What is num 1? Num 1 is 10. What is num 2? 5. Then sum is going to be what? 15. So let's try one more condition. Let's say we have let num 3 equals to 22. And let's say let num 4 equals to what? 6, right? Now let's try this condition. Now let's say we have this. We have let me take this now. Let's say we have this and want to evaluate for this. Say if num 3 equals to 10 and num 4 equals to 6. So what is going to happen now? This num is going to go to the memory and check the value for num 3, right? And what is the value for num 3?
2.
2. Then it's going to change this to what? 2. And also going to go to the memory and check the value for num 4. What is the value for num 4?
6.
6. It's going to replace this with 6. Now in the next line, then it's going to check does 2 equals to 10? Does 2 equals to 10?
No.
No. Then this is going to be what? False.
False.
And it's going to check this, does 6 equals to 6?
Yes.
Then it's going to take this to be true. And remember, what are we doing? What is the operator here?
And.
And then what is, you can see this condition says false and true, right? Let's go back to here. What do we have here? False and true. What is going to be the result? What is the result for false and true?
False.
False. Then this is going to come down here and do what? Going to set the result to what?
False.
Result is equals to false. And if the result is equals to false, what's inside this curly braces or curly brackets is not going to work. Then it's just going to pass over this code and come to the next line. And we are not going to see anything. It's not going to compute this operation. Or yeah, it's not going to complete this operation. Do we understand that? Like, is that clear enough? Or do you want me to explain anything? Hello? Hello? Hello?
I don't understand why you said it's not complete the operation.
Okay, yeah. So let's do it this way for you to understand now. So I'm going to stop sharing now. And I'm going to start sharing again. So let's go to, let me share my screen again. Okay. I'm trying to share my screen all over again. So now I'm going to share my screen. So let me know if you can see my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so now you remember, if at least you're familiar with this console, right? Which you've been using for a while now. So now let's try to do this now. This last same example we did the other time, let's try to do it. Let's say num 3. We said num 3 equals to what? 4, right? I can't remember the actual value. I think that's what we did. Then let's say let norm 4 equals to 6, right? So now, or we can even do it this way. Let's use what is the name of that thing again? CS bin slash callback. Now then I can go to callback. At least you all can see my screen, right?
Yes.
Okay, so
Yeah.
let's try to write it there. Though we are supposed to reuse our Visual Studio Code anyway, but let's quickly do this here. We say let norm 3 equals to 4, right? And we say let norm 4 equals to what? 6, right? And in our case, we say if norm 3 strictly equals to 4, it strictly equals to, let's say, 10, and norm 4 strictly equals to 6, then we want to do two things. And you remember S, like Shegun also mentioned something about S, right?
Yeah.
So now what we want to do now is you want to do let sum equals to norm 3 plus norm 4, and we want to do what? Console.log what? Sum. And S, if this thing doesn't work, like if this body doesn't evaluate, then we want that code to jump here and do something like console.log the if statement doesn't work. Now you understand it. Now you remember what we did in the last time. We said this is going to go to memory and check the value for num 10, which is num 3, which is what? 4. It's going to substitute the 4 here, right? And does 4 equals to 10? No.
No.
This is going to be false, right? And it's going to check the value of num 4 in the memory. It's going to check it, which is what? 6, right? And it's going to put the 6 here. Does 6 equals to 6?
Yeah.
Yeah. And now it's going to go back. It's going to come to the next line. And remember, this is what? This is false, right? And this is true, right? And remember, we said this, for this code to move to line 6, for this code to move to line 6, like for this code to leave line 5 and jump to line 6, this, both of them has to be true if it is and that is there. And if it is all that is there, one of them only has to be true for it to move to line 6. So for example, now let's try to run this code. By default, if both of them are true, we are supposed to see the sum of num3 plus num4 in our console. But if both of them are not true, if the result of both of them are not true, then this code is going to jump to line 8, it's going to jump to line 9 and print this to the console. So if I run this code now, let's see what we're going to get. Can you see what we get now? Do you understand it, or you want me to explain it again? Hello? 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 Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear. I can hear you, but I think I understand.
Do you understand it now? Okay, yeah, good. So the point there is we use this logical operator to check a case, and if that case is true, then we want that code that is inside of this body, inside of these curly braces to work. And if that case is not true, which means if this case is not true, then this case is true. Yes. And if the S is true, then you want to do this. We are going to see the use case of that now. Let's take another example. Let's take another. Yep.
Dami.
Yes.
When I was trying out the assignment, yeah, this and the symbol of the and on my laptop, now that you wrote it as in form of a $sign. I mean, when you were showing us how it is written at the other side, but when you came to
did I put $sign there?
Is this and I don't know, can you go back there? I just want to type what I'm asking, is this the sign on my laptop?
You can type, let's see.
Is it this one?
Which one? I can't say anything from you. I'm still waiting. I can't say anything.
Yeah, I'm trying to type in, but I cannot type from here.
Okay, so the something is, what you can always do is you can always, for example, now I like on my keyboard also, there are some symbols that I don't have on my keyboard, or let me say it's not like boldly written on my keyboard. For example, let's say I think I don't have a forward slash on my keyboard. Forward slash. So what you can always do is you can always just Google search. You can always Google search. You can see it's a forward slash. This back. Okay, what I don't have on my keyboard is backslash, but I think I have forward slash. So I don't have backslash. What you can always do is just Google search that symbol and copy it. For example, so let's say if you're not so sure of the operator, you can just do logical and symbol or operator symbol in JavaScript. You can Google search it, then you're going to see it, then you copy. Do you get that now? Just to be sure you have the writing. That's another way to it. So now moving on also, let's try one more thing on that. You're welcome. So let's try one more thing on that example now. Let's see what is going to happen now. Let's say we have the same code and we change this to what? And we change this to or. And let's try to do something. Let's say we can do example 2 and put it this way. So we know that this is example 2 and see what is going to happen. Example 2 and let's do this. Example 2 S, yeah, and let's do this to be, and see the result you're going to get for example 1. See the result you're going to get for example 2. Example 1 and but you can see my screen, right?
Yes.
Example 2, example 1S. This is going to be, this is not supposed to be there, and this is not supposed to be there. Yeah, so if I run this code now, remember I've changed this sign to be what? Or, and I have this sign to be and. So if I run this code now, let's see what you're going to get. You can see for example 1, it says example 1 is the if statement doesn't work, right? And it said example 2, what do we get for example 2? The sum is 10. It said example 2, sum is 10. So how does that happen? So remember I said for or, remember I said for or, one of them has to be true for this, for what is in the body to evaluate. And for and, both of them has to be true for that to evaluate. Do you understand that now? I believe I can move on. I can move on, right? So I'm talking about the last one. So what you just need to understand is understand this table. Once you understand this table, you are good to go. So and one last operator we'll be talking about is not. And what does not does is it's more or less like something that just change the Boolean value of that argument. For example, let's say if the result is, let's say we have the result to be true, and if you do, this is a symbol for not. You can see not. The symbol for it is just exclamation mark. It's a logical not operator change the argument to the opposite of the Boolean false or true. For example, if we said the result is true, let's say let result equals to 2. And if you add exclamation mark in front of the result like this, then if we try to get the value of, if you try to console.log the value of this exclamation mark result, then this is going to give us, the point there is going to change it to true. The point here is it's change the value, the Boolean value of that thing to the opposite. If the default value is false, then it's going to change it to true. If the default value is true, it's going to change it to false. So let me go back to this. Let me quickly use the console to explain here, so you see that in console. So let's say console now. So for example, console. So for example now, let's say result equals to true, right? And if you do exclamation mark of result, result is not it. Okay, yeah, I think I spelled the results wrong. So if I try to type the result now, and I do this, then I try to put exclamation mark, you can see change the result to what? You change the value to what? False.
False.
Also, if I predefine the value of result, let me say result 2, then I set the value to true. And if I do exclamation mark of result 2, you can see what it changes to what?
False.
False. So the essence of it is just to change the Boolean value of that thing. Another thing I think I can also point out is you can do double exclamation mark, and that is just going to change the value back to the former result. So if I do result 2, you can see change it back to what? You can see it's return the initial value of it. The point is this one is just going to do that not twice. The first time is going to change it to false. And if once again we do the exclamation mark on false, exclamation mark of false is going to be what? True, right? So that's just the trick with that logical operator. So now moving on to next thing we have in today's class. Let me go back to the note. So now I believe you understand this, though we didn't really talk much about use case here, but we see more use case now. So now moving on now, and today we are going to talk about iteration in JavaScript. I don't know, did Cheku mention iteration in the last class? I don't think he mentioned. No, right? Hello.
I don't know. I not stay till the end. I
Okay.
don't.
Because myself also, I left at some point, which I don't think and I think we watched the recorded video. I don't think he mentioned hydration, but between we can, I think we
I
can start
watched
with
the recorded video. I didn't hear
the hydration.
actually.
Okay, so yeah, good. And I don't know, I think my voice might be a little bit not that good today. Let's see. And what about now? Can you hear me now? Hello? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
You can hear me now, right? Hello?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes,
Okay,
Bami,
yeah.
we can hear you. Yeah, we can hear
Okay,
you.
yeah. Okay, yeah, good. So today we'll be talking about iteration. And why do we even do iteration in JavaScript? So for us to understand iteration can work on arrays, it can work on objects. Also, you can use iteration to manipulate strings, also numbers, maybe not. But we are going to see what iteration does now. Let's say first I'm going to bring out a use case. Then with that use case, we are going to do my explanation on it. So first thing we need to note is I think I copied one class. Okay, yeah. So let me bring this now. Then I'm going to use this to explain. So I remember from our previous example, we've been using this case. We said this is the name of class 1 student, right? And this is an array that contains the name of student in class 1. And in this class, we have a student called Comfort. We have a student which is of type string, Balaji. We have another student called Janet. We have another student called Shegun. We have another student called Ami, right? And so one interesting thing about this student is, what if we want to get all the names of the students in class 1? And you remember from the iteration, so let me do something here. Let me go back to these, and then I'm going to come back and explain how this iteration works now. So let me try something. How do we okay, I can do something like this. So for example, now let's say we have, this is the name of students in class 1, or we can say name of class 1 student, name of class 1 students, right? And we store it as an array, and we said in the array we have our first student called Comfort, and we have second student called Bolaji, right? And we have our third student called which other name do we have in there?
Janet.
Janet, okay. And next we have
Shagun.
Shegun, right? Yeah. And at least I should be able to remember my name that way. So this is the name of student in class 1. And I know if you remember from what Shegun taught you, he mentioned something about index. Like you can use index to get the elements in this class, right? And I'm pretty sure he mentioned something about length, right? Which I think I mentioned something about length in one of our previous, I think I mentioned length. So, but one thing here is, let's say we want to know different students in this class. What we can do is we can check, okay, which student is of index 0 in this class. Like we want to check the first student in this class. So if we do console.log this, if we run this, we should be able to see Comfort, right? Also, if this should give us string Comfort. So I know, I'm pretty sure you've come across this index, right? Shogun explain this and you understand this, right?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, good. So now let's say you want to get the second student in this class, which is going to be of index 1. This should give us string called string name Bolaji. We do it right. Yeah, you can see Bolaji there. And let's say also we also want to do check 2. This should give us Janet, right? Yes. Also, but one thing you should start asking me now is, what if we have 1,000 students in this class? Are we going to start logging? Like, it doesn't make sense logging them one by one, right, with index? That should be one question you start asking me now. Like, what if we have 5,000 students in this class or 1,000 students in this class? It doesn't make sense for us to now write index from 0 to like 999. That doesn't scale. So one question you start asking is, there should be a way, like there should be a way we can do it. It's going to make it much better than writing it like this. And that's where iteration comes in. But by default, because we only have like 5 students in this class, I was able to like use index to get each of their names from the array. But now here comes the iteration. Instead of us doing it one by one, we can actually you can actually iterate over these arrays and console log their name out one by one. So what did I mean? So iteration is just a way whereby we write a code that's going to keep doing something for us over and over until we get to the end of that loop. It's just like a way to loop something. Like you want to let that code keep doing something over and over again until it gets to the end of the condition you gave it. I know that extension doesn't make sense now, but for you to understand it now, so I'm going to go back to the note and explain how iteration works in JavaScript to us. Then that way we now go back and do an example of how we can use iteration to perform the last operation we did. So first thing is iteration in JavaScript. We use this to like access element of an array or of an object, string, and once we access those elements of an array or an object or a string, then we can use it to like perform an operation or to manipulate the element. So what does that mean is, for example, in we have different ways to perform iterations in JavaScript. These three, I think these first three are more like the old ways of doing it, and this is still very mostly used today. And this one is more like a modern way of doing it. And we also have, I know you've came across this before, because I remember Shegun mentioned something like let me go up a little. I know you've come across, yeah, you mentioned something called map. And what this map does is also like an iteration. It uses that map to loop through over the element of that array. How this map works is more or less like how for loops works. The only difference is map is just a function on an array, but since we haven't really talked about options now, I don't really want to complicate functions or method now. So I'm just going to walk us through that loop or iteration. Then you understand, you be able to like remember from the last class when Chegun was talking about map. So for us to do an iteration on an array, so first case is going to be performing an iteration on an array in JavaScript. Remember, we said this is going to be for JavaScript. It's going to be for an array first. And how does it work? We can use any of these to perform an operation. So I think for this class, we only try to use maybe for y and maybe for of for the array, if depending on the time. And also we also do maybe for in for object. So but let's try with for. So using for loop to perform iteration in JavaScript array. So what is the syntax behind for loop? For us to do for loop in an array, first thing we need to have is, this is how we used to write for loop in an array. We write for, then we write these two brackets, then inside of it we are going to have they call it initializer, if I'm right with the English, initializer. Then the second argument is going to be the condition, and the third one is going to be the counter. I'm going to explain it, the counter. Then, and one thing about anytime you see this is we always have something called this body. Like what you're trying to do here is also, you remember the if statement we mentioned the other time. You said if this can only work if and only if the result evaluates to true, right? And same thing also comes here. This can only work if the condition evaluates to true. And the condition is more or less like doing an if statement here, just that we are not writing an if statement. So what does condition means? What does initializer means? And what does counter means? I'm going to explain it now. So for example, what does initializer means? You remember we mentioned something about how to initialize a variable, right? Which is, how do we initialize a variable? It's more or less just doing something like let name of variable, this variable initialization, right? But in this case, this is variable declaration. But initialization means we give it a value depending on the type of data type you're talking about. But mostly in for loop, we use number as the variable of that data type. And in this case, initializer is going to be, it's most of the time we use numbers to perform that as our initializer. So right now, if I'm trying to initialize a variable, it's going to be what? I'm going to declare that variable and I'm going to give it a value. That's just what this is what the initializer is talking about, initializer. And what is initializer is talking about? Just to like for you to declare a variable and assign it a value. That's what initializer is talking about. And we're going to see that shortly now. And the second thing is what? The condition. It's just like you are trying to do, remember we said a conditional statement, which is if statement, if and else statement. It means if this is true, it's just like you're trying to perform a condition, like you're trying to say if the result equals to true, then do what? Enter this line of code. Means enter, sorry, it's going to be enter this line of code. Then the last condition is, the last argument there is counter. Counter is just a way to like increment or decrement our initializer variable. Remember I said something here like decrement variable, yes. So remember I mentioned something like I'm coming, just trying to make sure everything looks good. So you remember I mentioned something like first here, I said this variable most of the time is always what? Is always of data type number. So how does this work now? So now for us to understand this better, now I'm going to copy this code now, and I'm going to rewrite it on this line. So first thing we said, we have this for, and the initializer is going to be what? You're going to, it's more like you are declaring a variable, right? And give it a value. But most of the time, instead of the variable name, you can call the variable name anything. But most of the time, instead of people calling it any variable name, most of the time they call it I. Then you give it a value. You can give it any value. It could be 1, it could be 20, it could be 50, depending on the operation you're trying to perform. It's going to take a value. So let's say the value is equal to 0. And you're going to have a condition, and that condition is going to be, you're going to check if I is less than. So different type of operator here could be another operator. I don't know if we mentioned about this operator is I can quickly mention them now. So a couple of other operator we have is, we know this from our primary school to be less than, right? Less than operator, right? No, this should be greater than, sorry. From our primary school, right? This is greater than sign, right? And this is less than, and this is greater than, this is less than, sorry, less than or equals to, and this is greater than or equals to. So now coming back to, so the condition you can now give it is, you can check if I is less than, you can use less than or greater than or greater than or greater than or equals to, or less than or equals to. You can use any of these four operators. You can use any of these four operators here. So depending on the scenario, we're going to take a look at the scenario, and then we all are going to reason behind the operator sign to use. So, but in this instance, we can use either less than, we can use greater than, we can use greater than or equals to, we can use greater than or less than or equals to. But in this instance, let's just assume you're using less than. Then what are you trying to compare? Then what are you trying to compare? It's going to be compared variable. We are coming back to that. And the counter is going to be, like I said, the counter could be either we increment or decrement the what? The initializer. Then it's going to be either we decrement. So once if you put double plus signs there, it means you're trying to increment. And this is more or less like saying 1 plus I plus 1. If you do double plus sign here, it means you are trying to say I plus 1. So for example, if you go back to our console, let's try this in console, because if you try to do I, let's say we declare I to be what? I to be 1, it to be 0. And now if you check I is going to be what? 0. And if you do I plus 1, what is going to be the value of this? If you add 1 to 0, it's going to be what? 1. If we do I plus plus, because we already increment I by 1, this should be what? Okay, this is supposed to console.log. Let's see. Yeah, you can say this. Anyways, so this plus plus is doing the same thing as you adding 1 to it. And what is that thing I need to mention here? What is that thing I need to mention here? Also, same thing goes for if we do j and we set j equals to 2, and if we do j, we do console.log, and we do j minus 1. This is supposed to give us 1. Also, let's say j again equals to 2, and if you do console.j minus minus, something is not right. I know. So, but for now, the point I'm trying to make here is this minus sign is doing the same thing as you subtracting 1 from J. And also plus is doing the same work as you adding 1 to your high, or adding 1 to G, or adding 1 to anything. So not to waste our time, I'm coming back now. Then I want us to, I can see we only have we only have like 15 minutes. I want us to at least cover this for and why before we go to today. And so for now, this is the structure of the for loop. We have a variable we declare and set it a value, give it a value. And also we have the condition. This condition is want to check if this I is less than the compare value we are comparing with. And then we are trying to do what? Do the counter. So now let's take a look. Let's bring this case to this scenario now. Remember the scenario we are trying to do was let's assume like the taxes remember the school asked us to console the name of all students in class 1 to the terminal using for loop. So what the school is trying to ask us, so the school gave us a register of the name of students in class 1. And maybe let's use this case study. I think this is going to be let's use this case study, and let's use so let me come up with another case study now. Let's say we have these are the list age of students of class 1 student. This is going to, like, we are going to get this, we are going to understand this much better now. Let's say we have, and remember we said, okay, let's say first person in class 1 is 5, second person is 7, third person is like 5, fourth person is 6, and the last person is like, let's say that person is 8. So we have 5 students in class 1, and this is their age. And let's say after 1 year, let's say this is 20. So when they collected this, when they have this age was in 2021. Now we are in 2022, which by December 31st of 2022, all of them should have at least increased in their age by 1, right? If in 2021, students 1 in class 1 is 5, age 5, student 2 in class 1 is age 7, student 3 in class 1 is age 5, and thereabout. In 2022, December 31st, student 1 in class 1 should be 6 now, right? Students 2 in class 1 should be 8 now, right? Also, students 3 in class 1 should be 6 now. So, and the school wants us to do, let's change this to be. So now the school contacted us. The school contacted us to write a code or a program or a JavaScript code, a JavaScript program that increase the age of class 1 student by 1. This is just like this is the explanation I explained now. So we assume like they are in 2022 now, and the school wants to increase the age of these students because the last time they increased their age was in 2021. So now they want us to increase their age. Like they want us to update their age now. And remember, how can we get this value from this array? We can do index of like the index we did there. Remember the index we did there, get their age 1 by 1 and just add 1 to it. But what if we have like 500 students in this class? That is going to take a lot of time. Then we should be able to come up with a simple way that we just have to write the code and it's going to do everything for us by itself. So we don't have to bother by getting their values by index 1 by 1. So, and that is where iteration comes in. Iteration helps us to like repeat a task like over and over again by itself, not us doing it manually. So that's the use case of iteration now. So now going back to that example now, we know this is the age of student in class 1, and we want to write a code that is going to increase their age by 1. So now, and to increase their age by 1, we should be able to get each student out 1 by 1, their age out 1 by 1, and increase it by 1. So now one use cases, we can use for loop to do this because it's an array, because for loops works on array. So now can we do this now, which I just explained, like the syntax for writing for loop in JavaScript is we write a for, we open the bracket, we have our initializer, and I think it's separated by this, not that comma. We have the initializer, and we have the condition, and we have the counter. So now, if that is settled now, so one thing we can do is, first, to do this, one of the first questions we need to ask ourselves is, what is going to be our condition? Remember, we want to start with the first person in that class, right? And using the index to get the first person in class, we have to set, because we want to get the first person in class, and how does array works with index, right? And remember, if you want to get the first person in class, you can only get it within the index of what? 0, right? So which means, since we want to get every one of them, and want to get the first person first, you can set our initializer to be what? To be value of what?
0.
0. That's first way to know. That's the, like, a very good way to really know where to start with your initializer. You just need to think around, like, okay, where did we want to start your iteration from? If I want to start from the last now, if I want to start from the last, what am I going to set the initializer to? Using the same index.
4.
4, exactly. Then it means my initializer is going to be what? 4. But because I'm starting from the first person, the initializer is going to be what? 0.
0.
Do we understand how this initializer works now?
So if we have if we have 500 and then
Okay.
we want to start with the 500, so we
Mhm.
initialize on the 500.
So, and remember, index is always what? Index is always length minus what? Minus 1. To get the last index, last index is always what? Length minus 1. Remember, you said if the student in that class is what? 500, which means the length of student in that class is what? 500, right? And to now know, your question was, if you want to start from the last student, if it is 500, then what is going to be our index in this scenario now? Index for the last student, last index is going to be what now?
499.
Exactly, minus 1, which is going to be what?
Minus 1.
Minus 1 is going to be what? 499. So this is only if you want to start from the back. I don't know if I answer. Do you understand that?
499.
Do you understand that now? It's like,
Yeah.
it's very, I really appreciate that you mentioned this length. You mentioned that numbers now, because now this is going to take us to the next thing in this for loop. Now we understand this initializer. The next thing is the compare. Remember, we said we want to start from the first person in that class, and we only want to check to the what? To the last person in that class, right? And how can we know the last person in that class? Which is what? We can use what to know the last person in the class? What?
The length.
The length, exactly. So because we only want to we want to make sure that this this initializer, or the variable for the initializer, is less than or equals to what? Is always in this case is going to be less than the what? The length of that thing we are checking with. Because we don't want our array to loop over more than the numbers of the class, right? Do you get it?
Yeah.
So what do we always compare to is, we always compare to the length of that array. So which one do we use? Do we use less than or equals to? Looking at this, we don't want to use greater than, because you know that okay, maybe I can explain this anyway. So we always want to make sure our index is less than the length, right? We don't, our index should not be greater than the length, because if the index is greater than the length, it means we are going to like loop over the numbers of students in that class. So in this case, we want to make sure our index is less than because that's the only condition that is going to the code is going to terminate. I'm still coming back to that anyway. And so it now left to either we use less than or equals to or less than or less than this. But one thing I think I need to, but I just want to, I think we only have 5 minutes, and I want us to at least do this for loop. I'm going to, there's some things that I can skip now, which I'm going to explain later anyway. So, and the last part is we do the increment, because every time, once this condition is true, if this condition is true, then remember the if statement, right? You said if the condition is true, then it's going to enter that body of that code, and it's going to evaluate whatever I want it to evaluate. So provided this condition is true, then this is going to enter the body of that code and do whatever I want it to do. Once it does that thing, then this increment is going to work. Then it's going to come back to this increment and increase this I by 1. And this I is going to be what? It's going to add 1 to that I. For initial value of I is what? 0. And once this evaluates, I is going to be what now?
1.
1. Then it's going to come back again. It's going to go back again. It's going to check. Now I is 1. So okay, let me do it this way now. Let me explain. So one thing I also need to point out is, how do we get the length of an array? To get length of an array, you can just call the property length on that array. If you do array.length, it's going to give you what? Array.length is going to give you or get you the length of the array. So now, this is a way to know the length of an array. You just have to do array.length. Now in this case, so now to know the length of this array, what we just have to do is what? Do dot length on this, and this is going to be what?
Array.length or an array.length.
And the value of this is going to be what? What is the length of this array? Length is 5 exactly. This is going to return 5. So which means if we do length, if we do length of class, or I don't want to write long stuff, but let's just assume we call it length of class 1. If we call this is going to come back and tell us like length of class 1 equals to 5. So we can quickly do that on console and see what we're going to get on console. Let's go back to console. We only have 2 minutes. How come time flies like?
Honestly.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, is it off? Off. The spelling in off, OF is in capital.
But I don't think that should matter. I think I omitted L in the let.
The O
That's
is
what I'm
0.
getting.
The O is 0.
Even still, that doesn't matter anyway. Remember, I said we can name our array. We can use anything to name our array, provided you follow this. It's not starting with number, right?
Okay.
So what I mixed there was L. I didn't put L in front of let.
Okay.
So if I run this now, then if I now do let length equals to, then I get this array. And I try to do dot length. Then if I do length, I know I didn't spell that length right. Yeah, you can see it. Call it to be what? 5. So now that we know that our length is 5, now let's try to like visualize how this is going to work now. For the first time, I'm going to rewrite this thing very well now. For this same example, I'm going to write it very well now. And I'm going to bring out some things. We know, okay, this is our array. And this is our array, right? We know that let length of this. I'm just trying to write this code so that if you go on your own and you try to run this code by yourself, it should be able to work for you also. Dot length, right? And length here should give us, should cost to 5, right? So now if I try to write this code, I said let I is equals to 0. And so we only have 1 minute left. Should we call it a day and take this in our next class? Or we should try and finish with this for loop? Hello?
Even if we finish this, we still have to go over it again in the next class.
Why? So we
I'm
can call
just
it.
thinking, okay, but I'm just thinking we started it, we should finish it.
Okay, so let's do it this way.
But
If you want us to finish this, you can just give a reaction, a thumbs up. I think there should be a reaction somewhere down. You can just do a reaction, thumbs up, and okay, we have one now. So at least if you want to continue, we need to get thumbs up of 3. We only have thumbs up of 1.
Let's finish it now.
Okay, 2. We need 1 more.
yeah, let's go ahead.
Okay, 3. Yeah, so we can go ahead. So now, so I think we stop here now. So to visualize this, we set our initializer to be the starting index of where we want to start. Then what do we want to compare with? We want to compare with the length, right? Then we put the length here. And we just don't put the length here because I already get the value of the length with this, and I set the value of it to be what length. That's the only reason I'm putting that length here. Normally, if I don't want to set, if I'm not setting the length, I can just get that array and put dot length on it. It's still the same thing as this length. Do you understand this part? Hello?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, good. So this is more or less, this length is the same thing as this. And remember, I'm not just putting the value of 5 there because I can also put the value of that 5 there because I already computed. I know that the value is going to be 5, but there are some scenarios whereby you don't want to compute. You just want to get the value yourself. You want to get the value and just let the code get the value by itself and put it there. So now I'm putting this there, and I can also put length there because I already evaluated the value of this to be length, and because I set the value to be length. Then if this is the case, then I cannot put the increment there. And remember, we want to increase the number of age of student, and this is going to be norm at the position of index. I'm going to visualize this so we understand. It's going to be this norm I plus 1. So now let's try to visualize this and see how this is going to work now. So first thing is, for the first time, this is going to get the value of I. It's going to get the value of I to be 0. And it's going to check and this is going to, let me get this on another line to understand it. Once we do this, then we run it on that sales bin and we'll see the result anyway. So for the first time, I is going to be 0. And it's going to check I is 0, right? And it's going to, what is the value of length? 5.
5.
Is 0 less than 5?
Yeah.
Yeah, and if 0 is equals to less than 5, it's going to come down inside of this code. Sorry that I put norm there. This should be, sorry, this is a mistake on my part. This should be age of class students. Age of class students. Yeah. And yeah, this. It should be something like this. So it's going to come inside of this code and it's going to replace this I with what? Remember, I is what? 0. It's going to set this I to be what? To be 0. And also it's going to set this I to be 0. And it's going to go to the memory and check what is the number for I is equals to 0 in that array. And the I equals to 0 in that array is what?
5.
Equals to what? 5. And it's going to put 5 here. And 5 plus 1 is equals to what?
6.
6. And in our array, let me get the array now. If I get this array, let me put the array down. Okay, yeah, let me put the array. Okay, let me put the array here. So for the first time that this is going to work, then if this is equals to 6, then what is, and remember this is assignment operator, right? Assignment sign, right? And it's going to go to the the array and get the it's going to go there and check which element is at index 0. It is 5, right? And it's going to change that value to what? Change it to 6.
5. Yeah. Okay.
Because we had 1 to that value. It's going to change it to what?
Okay,
6. Then the second time, now remember I'm copying this one after the other. This is the first iteration, right? And this is going to be the second. Is going to be second iteration. So the second time, then once this is done, it's going to come here and increase I to be what? It's going to change I to be what? I to be 1. This is going to trigger this counter is going to trigger. It's going to be plus plus. It's going to add 1 to this, and you can say I has changed to 1. Then it's going to, once I change to 1, this is going to change to 1 also, and it's going to check is 1 less than 5. Is 1 less than 5?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And it's going to go there and check what is the value in at index 1. It is what? 7.
7.
And it's going to do what? Add this 1 to the 7. Once that is 1 to the 7, it's going to go to the array again and check. I'm going to replace the value in that array to be what?
Okay.
8, right? Then the second time, the third time now, third iteration now. The third iteration also, before the third iteration happen, this I plus plus is going to increment I from 1 to 2 now. And this is going to be 2. And it's going to check, is 2 less than 5?
Yeah.
And if this is true, it's going to enter this body. And it's going to change this to be 2. And it's going to go to the array and get the element of, which element is at index 2?
Which is 5.
5. It's going to bring that 5 here. And now this is 6, right? And it's going to go to index 2. Which element is at index 2? Which is 5. And the value is going to be what now? 6, right? Then for the fourth iteration, and also before the fourth iteration happen, it's going to increment I to be what now?
6.
No, it's going to increment I to be 3, right? Yeah. I is going to be 3 now. And it's going to change this to 3. Remember, what we have here is always I. Okay, maybe I can write it this way. I is equals to 3. Yeah, and it's going to check is I and I is 3, right? Is 3 less than 5? Yes, right? And if that is the case, this is going to happen. And it's going to check what is the element at index 3 now, which is what? 6, right? And 6 plus 1 now is going to be what?
7.
And it's going to go back to in that element in that index 3, and it's going to change the value to what? 7, right? And now the fifth iteration also is going to increase I from 3 to 4, right?
Okay.
And it's going to check is 4 less than 5?
Yes.
And it's going to come here. Once 4 is less than 5, it's going to change this I to 4. And what is the element we have at index 4?
8.
8 now. And 8 plus 1, 9. And it's going to go to that array also, change this to what? 9, right? Now, the fifth iteration now. And remember, this is going to increase to, this is going to be the fifth iteration. Fifth iteration. And this is going to increase this to 5, and this is going to be 5. Is 5 less than 5? No. Then what is going to happen? Remember, this code can only run if this is true, if the condition is true, right? And if the condition is not true, what is going to happen? It's going to skip over this code, and it's going to go to the next line, and we don't have it, and we don't have anything in this next line, which means we've reached the end of our array, or we haven't reached the end of our array.
Okay.
You can see with this index we've reached the end of the array, right? So which means this is not going to happen.
So let's say we have 500 or 1,000 students in the class. Then we're going to do these iterations for the 1,000 like that.
Yeah, exactly. So, and remember, because we are running this visually by ourselves, that's why it seems like this is doing by itself. So now, if the computer is running this by itself, we only have to write this one code here. We only have to write this one code, and it will be the one to do it by itself for us. Do you get it now? So, and compared to what we did in the first place, now let's go back to that code again and try to implement these. And remember, when we're trying to get the name out, we have to log it out by ourselves one by one. As you mentioned, let's assume we have 500 students in that class. This is going to be, it's going to take us a lot of time to log each student out one by one, right?
Yeah.
So now let's try to do the same thing. And with this age, let's come back now. And let me do this. This is the age of the student in class. And first thing is, so we can write our for loop now. You can see now I'm not trying to get the length. I can do the same thing, or I can get the length also. I can, but not to waste time. I can get the length. Length of array. I can do this and set it to this, but it's still the same thing as if I do it like this. If I remember, we said the first thing that has to come in is the initializer, right? It's going to be I equals to, we set it to be of the first index where we want to start, which is index 0. And the next thing is we have this sign, and then I can just check. Then I have my condition, which is going to be I less than the length of that array, right? Which is with the same thing as that. Then I have my counter, right? Then the next thing is we have this body, and then we can do, so now we can do, now what we are supposed to do is we want to increase the age, right? And the same code we did was we have this at index I, because we want to use I to index them, because I is the only thing that's going to change it. And we set it to this same thing, I plus 1, because we want to increase the age by 1. Then if this code finish running, then we want to console.log the age. We want to see their new age. So if I run this code now, let's see what we're going to get. Unexpected identifier where I understand that length. Okay, yeah. So I think I wrote this in capital letter. Small letter again. Let's run this. You can see by default now on this console, what do we have now? This is not the same thing we got when we run it manually, right?
Yeah.
This increases by 1, increases by 1, increases by 1, increases by 1. And if you look at this, we only have how many lines of code now? We only have like 1, 2, 3, because this we didn't use it. I only show it because it's the same thing as what we have here. So we only have like 1, 2, 3, 4 lines of code. And once when we are trying to increment, when we are trying to do it manually, we had how many lines of code before? So come to think of it, if you have 500 students in that class, which means using the first approach, we have to do this like 500 times. But if we also have 500 students in this class, these 4 lines of code is going to help us do the same thing, like writing these 500 times. So do you understand the use case of these iteration now? Also, if I try to increase this by, let's say I increase this by, I increase this to like, you can say I keep increasing this. And if I also, you can see how many numbers of students we have, in this class now. If I run this also, you can see it also increases by, so with this same line of code, I can perform this same operation on this, depending on the how if this arrays is. With that iteration, I can also perform the same thing on them. Instead of, imagine if I have to run this manually by myself, I have to type age of class 1 student index 0, age of class 1 index 1, then plus 1, age of class, then 2 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 on each of them. So you see, with iteration, it makes things like very easy for us, like much easier for us than doing it manually. So I don't know if you at least understand how iteration, works in JavaScript for array.
Yes, more.
Okay, so yeah. Any question?
Don't go cry laughing. I just more.
You're not alone.
Any question? The something is, if you watch the video all over again, I think
Yes.
you understand it much better. And Also, I don't know how much you are doing the assignments we have. If we keep at least trying this assignment, and if you don't understand anything, we can always ask questions. Like for today's class, I added one assignment you're supposed to do.
That means the
Which
last
is-
assignment I got stuck.
Maybe you can wait after the class and we can look through it together anyway.
Okay.
So we don't keep others waiting. And anyone that wants to join also can also wait. So I think at this point we can end this class. And I'm going to stop the
I will
recording
join.
now.
No, I'm still on the trip.
I'm going to stop the recording now. Pause the recording and stop the